Tomorrow sounds harmless, doesn't it? It sounds like a second chance that is always available, like a door that never locks, like a promise life is making to you that there will always be more time. And that is exactly why so many people never escape the life they don't want. Because tomorrow feels safe, tomorrow feels generous, tomorrow feels like control, but it is the most silent form of delay ever created in the human mind. Let me tell you something you may not want to hear, but you already know deep down, tomorrow is the place where dreams go to disappear slowly. Not all at once, not dramatically, but quietly, one postponed action at a time, one delayed decision at a time, one I'll start later at a time. And before you realize it, weeks turn into months. Months turn into years. And the same person who once said, I will change my life, is now living a life that looks exactly the same as before, only heavier, only more frustrating, only more filled with regret that has learned how to stay quiet. You see, the mind loves tomorrow because tomorrow asks nothing from you today. It doesn't demand discipline right now. It doesn't require discomfort right now. It lets you breathe easy in the present while stealing your future in the background. That is the illusion, and here is the truth that most people avoid. Every time you say tomorrow, you are not just delaying action, you are training your identity to delay action. You are teaching yourself that urgency is optional, that your goals are negotiable, that your dreams can wait for a better version of you that never actually arrives unless you build it today. Look at your life honestly. How many times have you promised yourself a new beginning on a Monday, only to break it by Wednesday? How many times have you said, next month will be different, only to repeat the same cycle again? It is not because you are incapable. It is because you have been feeding your mind a dangerous belief that there will always be more time to fix what you are avoiding now. But time does not negotiate. It does not pause. It does not slow down because you are unprepared. It moves at the same pace for everyone, and it quietly exposes those who confuse intention with action. There are people right now, ordinary people, who once had the same dreams you have. They once had the same excuses too, but at some point they made a decision. You don't rise by waiting for life to get easier. You rise by deciding to move while life is still hard. And that decision changed everything, because the difference between the person who stays stuck and the person who breaks through is not talent. It is not luck. It is not even opportunity. It is the moment they stop giving tomorrow power over today. If you are watching this right now, understand this clearly. This moment is not random. This is not just another video, another speech, another passing thought. This is a confrontation, a quiet one, a personal one, because somewhere inside you, you already feel it. That tension between who you are and who you know you could become. And I made you to sit with that feeling for a second, not tomorrow, not later, right now, because the life you keep imagining is not built in imagination. It is built in execution. It is built in execution. In small actions that feel insignificant in the moment but compound into something unstoppable over time. Nobody is coming to rescue your future from your present habits. Nobody is coming to push you out of comfort. Nobody is coming to force discipline into your life. That responsibility is sitting directly in front of you, disguised as choice. And here is what makes tomorrow so dangerous. It always gives you permission to avoid becoming who you are meant to be. It whispers that you are not ready yet, that conditions need to improve, that motivation needs to return. But readiness is not something you wait for. It is something you build by stepping forward while you still feel uncertain. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need perfect timing. You don't need perfect timing. You need a decision that is stronger than your excuses. And if you are honest with yourself, you will realize something powerful. The future you are waiting for is also waiting for you. But it will not meet you in tomorrow. It only meets you in action. So the question is no longer, when will you start? Let's talk about responsibility, because this is the moment most people try to escape from the truth without realizing they are escaping their own life. It is always easier to point somewhere else. Easier to say it's the timing. Easier to say it's the environment. Easier to say it's the people around you. Easier to say you didn't get the right opportunities, the right support, the right start. And yes, all of that may be part of your story, but none of it is the reason your life is stuck the way it is today. Because at some point, every human being reaches a quiet crossroads where excuses stop building anything and responsibility becomes the only thing left that can move you forward. And I need you to hear this clearly, not as criticism, but as clarity. Your life is not shaped by what happens to you. Your life is shaped by what you choose to do with what happens to you. Two people can go through the exact same situation and come out completely different. One becomes bitter, blaming everything around them. The other becomes stronger, sharper, more focused, more determined. Same situation, different response. And that response is everything. Different response, and that response is everything. Responsibility is not about blaming yourself for everything. It is about finally understanding that you are the only one who has the power to change your direction. The moment you accept that truth, something powerful happens. You stop waiting for life to improve and you start building improvement into your life. But most people resist this idea because responsibility feels heavy at first. It feels like pressure. It feels like accountability. It feels like standing alone without excuses to lean on. And yes, it is uncomfortable, but so is staying stuck. So is repeating the same year over and over again. So is watching your potential fade while you wait for someone else to fix what only you can fix. There is a hidden strength in responsibility that most people never discover, because when you stop blaming, you stop leaking your power. Because when you stop leaking your power, every excuse you hold on to is energy you lose. Every time you say, it's not my fault, you quietly give away control. And without control, you cannot change anything. Look at your daily life. When something doesn't work out, do you immediately look for what you can adjust? Or do you look for what went wrong outside of you? When you fail, do you reflect on your choices? Or do you search for reasons that protect your ego but delay your growth? Because growth begins the moment you turn the mirror inward, not outward. And here is something even more important. You are not responsible for everything that happened to you, but you are responsible for everything that comes after this moment. That is where your power begins. Not in the past, not in what you lost, but in what you decide next. There are people who grew up with less than you, faced more than you, carried heavier burdens than you, and still found a way to rise, not be. It comes because life treated them better, but because at some point they stopped negotiating with excuses and started taking ownership of their direction. Responsibility is where your identity begins to shift. Because as long as you are blaming, you are still reacting to life. But when you take ownership, you start creating life. But when you take ownership, you start creating life. And that shift is what separates those who stay stuck from those who move forward. You don't need perfect conditions to take responsibility. You need honesty. You need the courage to say, this is my life. And if I want it to change, I have to change how I move inside it. Nobody is coming to take that responsibility from you. And honestly, that is the most powerful truth you will ever accept. Because the moment you stop waiting for rescue, you start discovering strength you didn't know you had. And maybe right now this feels uncomfortable. Maybe it challenges the stories you've been telling yourself for years. But discomfort is not your enemy here. It is your awakening. It is the pressure that turns awareness into action. Motivation is one of the most misunderstood forces in human life. People chase it like it is something permanent, something reliable, something that will always show up when they need it. But motivation is not built to stay. It rises in moments of emotion, in moments of inspiration, in moments when something external touches you deeply, and then it disappears just as easily as it came. That is why so many people start strong and collapse quietly. They watch something powerful, they feel something intense, they make promises to themselves in that emotional peak. And for a few hours, maybe a few days, they believe everything is going to change. But when the feeling fades, so does the action. And suddenly, they are back where they started, wondering what went wrong. Nothing went wrong with the dream. Nothing went wrong with the dream. Nothing went wrong with the dream. Nothing went intention. What went wrong was dependence on something that was never meant to carry their entire future, because motivation was never designed to build your life. It was only designed to introduce the idea of change. What actually builds your life is something far less exciting in the moment, but infinitely more powerful in the long run: discipline. Discipline is not emotional. It does not depend on how you feel. It does not ask whether you are inspired today or tired today. It simply asks one question: what did you say you would do? And that question does not change based on your mood. This is where most people break, not because they lack dreams, not because they lack intelligence, but because they have tied their actions to their emotions. So when emotions drop, actions disappear, and when actions disappear, nothing in their life changes. But there is a different type of person, the one who understands that feelings are temporary, but decisions are permanent. That person stops waiting for motivation and starts building for motivation and starts building structure, a structure that carries them even on the days they feel weak, distracted, or uncertain. Because discipline is not about intensity. It is about consistency. It is about consistency. It is doing something repeatedly, especially when there is no immediate reward, no applause, no excitement, just the quiet belief that every small action is shaping something bigger. Think about it like this. Motivation is fire. It burns bright, it looks powerful, but it fades quickly if it is not fueled. Discipline is construction. It is slow, it is steady, but it builds something that lasts far beyond the moment of inspiration. And your life is not built in moments of inspiration. It is built in ordinary moments that you choose to take seriously. The early morning when no one is watching. The decision to continue when quitting would feel easier. The ability to say no to die. Distraction when no one would even know you gave in. The choice to show up again, even when yesterday felt unproductive. These are the moments that shape identity, because discipline is not just in action. It becomes a reflection of who you are. Every time you do what you said you would do, you strengthen trust within yourself. And every time you break that promise, you weaken it. Over time, that trust becomes the foundation of confidence. And confidence is not something you wait to feel. It is something you build through repetition. Most people think they need to feel ready before they act. But readiness is not a feeling. It is a result. It comes after action, not before it. You become ready by doing, not by waiting. And this is where everything changes. Because once you stop relying on motivation, you stop being controlled by your emotions. You start leading your emotions instead of following them. There will be days when you feel nothing, no excitement, no drive, no inspiration, and those are the days that matter the most. Because if you can act on those days, you are no longer dependent on temporary feelings. You are operating from identity, and identity is where real transformation happens. You are not becoming disciplined by accident. You are becoming disciplined by choice. Every repeated action is shaping the kind of person you are becoming. And one day you will look back and realize it was never the big moments that changed your life. It was the small decisions you repeated when no one was watching. So stop asking yourself how motivated you feel. Start asking yourself what needs to be done and do it anyway. Comfort is one of the most deceptive forces in human life. It does not shout at you. It does not warn you. It does not tell you it is holding you back. In fact, it does the opposite. It feels good. It feels safe. It feels familiar. And that is exactly why it becomes dangerous. Because anything that feels too safe for too long will eventually start shrinking your potential without you noticing. You see, comfort is not the absence of problems. Comfort is the acceptance of limitation. It is when you begin to adjust your dreams to fit your current reality instead of adjusting your actions to expand it. It is when you stop asking, how far can I go, and start asking, how little can I do, and still be okay, and slowly, without realizing it, you begin to settle. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually, quietly, one small compromise at a time, one skipped opportunity, one avoided challenge, one delayed effort. And every time you choose comfort over growth, you reinforce a version of yourself that is easier to maintain but harder to respect. Because comfort does not destroy you immediately. It negotiates with you. It says things like, you deserve rest, even when you haven't done enough to rest from. It says you can start tomorrow, even when today is the only real moment you have. It says you have worked hard enough, even when your potential is still untouched. And if you listen to it long enough, comfort will convince you that staying the same is actually progress. But let me tell you something important. Growth and comfort rarely exist in the same space. They are not enemies in a dramatic sense. They are opposites in a structural sense. One expands you. The other preserves you. One builds capacity. The other reduces resistance. And life is constantly asking you which one you will choose. Every time you feel resistance before doing something meaningful, that is the moment you are standing at the border between comfort and growth. And most people unconsciously step back. They choose what feels easier instead of what builds them. But here is what they don't realize in that moment. Comfort always has a C. It just does not show the bill immediately. The cost appears later in the form of missed opportunities, in the form of regret that feels heavier than effort ever did, in the form of watching other people step into lives you once imagined for yourself. And then the question becomes painful, not why is life so hard, but why didn't I act when I had the chance? Comfort is powerful because it disguises itself as peace. But real peace does not come from avoidance. And real peace comes from alignment when your actions match your potential, when your effort matches your dreams, when your discipline matches your desire for more. There are people who spend years inside comfort thinking they are protecting themselves from failure, but what they don't see is that comfort is also protecting them from success. Because success demands movement, it demands discomfort, it demands uncertainty, it demands that you become someone unfamiliar to your current self. And that unfamiliarity is what most people resist. But if you look closely at every person who has ever built something meaningful, you will notice one thing they all had in common. They left comfort behind before they felt ready to do it. They stepped into situations where they didn't have guarantees. They entered spaces where they were not the most skilled, not the most prepared, not the most prepared. not the most confident. But they moved anyway because they understood that comfort does not create transformation. Challenge does. And here is the truth you need to face honestly. Your comfort zone is not just a place, it is a pattern of choices, a pattern of thinking, a pattern of avoiding discomfort disguised as logic. But nothing in your life will change until that pattern is interrupted. And interruption does not come from waiting. It comes from action that feels slightly uncomfortable but deeply necessary. That first conversation, that first disciplined morning, that first moment you choose effort over ease when no one is watching, that is where your life starts to shift. Not when everything feels right, but when you decide to move even when it doesn't, because comfort will always offer you a version of life that feels acceptable. But growth will offer you a version of life that feels unfamiliar before it feels powerful. The cost of inaction is one of the most silent forms of destruction in a human life. It does not announce itself. It does not make noise. It does not feel urgent in the moment. In fact, inaction often feels like nothing at all. But that is exactly why it is so dangerous. Because while you are doing nothing, life is still moving. Time does not pause for hesitation. It does not wait for clarity. It does not slow down until you feel ready. It keeps going with or without your permission. And every moment you choose not to act is a moment that gets permanently written into your story as missed potential. Most people don't realize this in real time. Inaction never feels like a loss when you are in it. It feels like comfort. It feels like safety. It feels like avoiding risk. You tell yourself you are thinking, planning, preparing, but slowly preparation becomes a hiding place. Thinking becomes a delay. Planning becomes a substitute for doing. And without noticing it, days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. And months turn into years of almost started, almost changed, almost built something, almost became who I was supposed to be, and almost became who I was supposed to be, and almost became who I was supposed to be, and almost became who I is a dangerous place to live because it feels close enough to success to keep you comfortable, but far enough from it to keep you stuck. The truth is, inaction always comes with a price. It is not free, it is just delayed. And the bill always arrives. It arrives in the form of regret, in the form of watching time pass faster than your progress, in the form of realizing that the life you imagined did not disappear, it simply got replaced by the life you allowed through your inaction. And here is something most people never admit to themselves. The pain of regret is heavier than the pain of effort, because effort hurts in the moment, but regret stays for years. Think about the times you avoided doing something difficult. At the moment, it probably felt like relief. You didn't have to face discomfort. You didn't have to risk failure. You didn't have to stretch yourself beyond what felt easy. But later, something changes. You start thinking about what could have been. You start imagining how different things might look if you had just taken that step. And that imagination slowly turns into frustration. Then frustration turns into regret. And regret has a way of staying longer than any failure ever would. Failure is temporary. Inaction becomes identity. Because when you fail, you at least learn something. You grow from it, you adjust, you move forward with experience. But when you do nothing, you gain nothing. No lesson, no progress, no direction, just time passing with no return. And that is why some of the most talented people in the world never reach their potential, not because they lacked ability, but because they repeatedly chose not to act when action mattered most. There is a hidden belief behind inaction that sounds harmless, but is deeply destructive. It is the belief that later will be better, that conditions will improve, that motivation will return. Hot confidence will magically appear before the first step. But life does not reward delayed courage. It rewards movement, even imperfect movement, especially imperfect movement, because action creates clarity. You do not think your way into a better life. You act your way into it. You discover direction by moving, not by waiting. You build confidence by doing, not by preparing endlessly. And every time you avoid action, you delay that discovery. Look closely at your own life. How many opportunities have you already delayed? How many conversations have you avoided? How many ideas have you left untouched? And if you are honest, it was never because you were incapable. It was because in that moment, inaction felt easier than effort. But easier is not the same as better. And the hardest truth to accept is this: no one is coming to recover your lost time for you. No one is going to replay the missed opportunities. No one is going to reset the clock. The only thing you still have control over is what you choose to do next. That is where power still exists in your next action. Because the past built your situation, but your response to this moment builds your future. And the difference between someone who stays stuck and someone who rises is not that one never lost time. It is that one decided to stop losing it. So the question becomes very real, very personal, very direct. How much more of your life are you willing to trade for hesitation? How many more opportunities need to pass before you decide that doing nothing is no longer acceptable? Pain is one of the most misunderstood forces in human life. Most people spend their entire existence trying to avoid it, escape it, numb it, or delay it. They see pain as a signal that something is wrong, something to run from, something that should not be part of the journey. But what if pain is not a warning? What if pain is actually a message? Because every person who has ever become stronger, sharper, more focused, more disciplined, did not become that version of themselves by avoiding pain. They became it by going through it, by facing it, and by learning how to use it instead of being destroyed by it. Pain will come into every life. There is no exception. It does not care about your plans, your dreams, your timing, or your comfort. It arrives in different forms. Sometimes it is failure. Sometimes it is failure. Sometimes it is loss. Sometimes it is rejection. Sometimes it is disappointment. And sometimes it is simply the frustration of not being where you want to be despite trying. And in that moment, you are given a choice that most people do not recognize. You can either let pain close you or you can let it shape you, because pain has two directions. One direction leads to collapse. The other leads to transformation. And the difference is not the pain itself. It is how you interpret it. Most people assume pain means stop. That discomfort means retreat. That struggle means they are on the wrong path. But in reality, pain is often the exact signal that you are pushing against your limits, and anything that pushes your limits is also pushing your growth. Think about it clearly. No muscle grows without resistance. No strength is built without pressure. No skill is developed without repetition that feels uncomfortable at first. The same principle that applies to the body applies to the mind, to discipline, to success, to character. Yet when life applies that pressure emotionally, people panic. They step back, they avoid, they quit. And then they wonder why they never become stronger. But strength was never supposed to feel easy while it is being built. There is a hidden truth inside pain that most people miss. It does not just hurt you, it reveals you, it shows you what you are made of. It exposes your limits, your fears, your weaknesses, but also your potential. And what you do in that moment defines the direction of your entire life. Because pain either becomes your excuse or your fuel. There are people who go through the same level of struggle and come out completely different. One person uses it as a reason to stop trying. The other uses it as a reason to become unstoppable. Same pain, different interpretation, different outcome. And that interpretation is everything. You don't become powerful by avoiding what hurts. You become powerful by learning how to stand inside it without collapsing. By refusing to let temporary discomfort decide your long-term direction, by understanding that this moment of struggle is not the end of your story, it is the shaping of it. Because every strong person you admire carries something you don't see, scars of battles they didn't quit during, moments when they could have stopped, days when quitting felt reasonable, nights when doubt felt louder than hope. But they stayed in it long enough for pain to transform into strength. And that is the part most people miss. Pain is not permanent. It changes form. If you endure it with awareness, it becomes discipline. It becomes wisdom. It becomes wisdom. It becomes resilience. It becomes a quiet confidence that cannot be taken away by external circumstances. But if you avoid it, it stays unresolved. It turns into fear. It turns into hesitation. It turns into a pattern of quitting whenever things become uncomfortable again, and whenever things become uncomfortable again. So the question is not whether you will face pain. You will. The real question is what role you will give it in your life. Will it be the reason you stop or the reason you rise? Because pain, when understood correctly, is not punishment. It is preparation. It is life forcing you to develop the strength you will need for the next level of yourself. And if you are going through nothing right now, something that feels heavy, something that feels uncertain, something that feels like too much, understand this: you are not being broken. You are being built. Not comfortably, not gently, but intentionally. And what is being built in you right now will one day become the reason you are able to stand where others gave up. Viewer engagement. If you are willing to stop running from what hurts and start using it to build who you are becoming, then this is the moment everything begins to change.